54. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. Today, I would like to introduce you to the Software Process and Measurement Cast's newest columnist. Keis Kostaqi is a Scrum Master and coach. She brings a Scrumban flavor to the podcast. Keis has experience with teams with complicated work input patterns. Today, we get to know Keis and get some interesting ideas along the way. Keis Kostaqi is a passionate Agile coach with years of experience in healthcare, information services, and technology. Currently serving as a program manager for the Agile Transformation Team, she enables individuals and teams to be successful through continual learning and growth. Keis serves as the Greater Illinois chapters of HIMSS Board of Directors as an Educational Programs Director. She is also a Woman in Agile member focused on building mentor-mentee relationships that help women in Agile community unlock their full potential. Are you ready to talk Scrumban with Keis Kostaqi? It's time for the interview. Keis Kostaqi, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
This is pretty exciting. Keis, you are joining a small cadre of people that are columnists on the podcast. People like John M. Quigley, Susan Parente, Tony Timble, Steve Tendon in the past. There have been a few, but I would suggest they're all luminaries. I'm not the luminary. They are. Your column, and I think you've decided on a name for your column. Do you want to tell the listeners what the name is?
Yeah, of course. I want to start by saying, though, I'm very honored to be part of this podcast. And like you said, there are very few people. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate that. When we're thinking about the column, what is something that we want to talk about related to Scrum Masters, right? It's one of the biggest roles one of the three roles in Agile. And we talk about facilitation, we talk about impediments, and we talk about what the Scrum Master does. But at the end of the day, it's not just a facilitator, because you do facilitate events and you do facilitate teams, and you do, help with the processes of Agile, and teams adopt that. But at the end of the day, what you're doing as an overall process, you're transforming. So as part of our column, going from a facilitator to a transformer, that's the Scrum Master's journey. So that's what we wanted to focus on.
Oh, super. And I'm looking forward to exploring that journey with you. But I really did think that Scrum Masters were just facilitators. So you're pulling my leg. They are just facilitators, right?
You heard it here first on this podcast. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. So again, Keis Kostaqi. Maybe my last name seems a little bit strange. It's actually pronounced Kostaqi, and it's a Greek last name. I'm actually Albanian. I was born in Albania and lived in Albania until I was 19. And then I moved to Chicago and I started working for a healthcare organization. And most of my background has been in healthcare. And especially in the Agile world, I've worked with multiple teams from the operations side to actually epic teams, and transform the way that they work and make them be Agile rather than do Agile. So one of the frameworks that I work with the most is Scrumban. And we use Scrumban just because of the type of work that these healthcare teams do. So you're thinking about patients, you're thinking about getting results, and you're thinking about getting medications dispensed. That is something that you cannot ask a nurse, or you cannot ask a pharmacist to wait 2 weeks or 4 weeks until the sprint ends. So obviously, we're doing a lot of keeping the lights on, helping nurses, helping doctors, and ultimately helping our patients. That is why we decided to use Scrumban as our framework, as our Agile framework. We're planning to make better products and to offer better services, but at the same time, we're also supporting clinicians, and we need to be flexible and we need to respond right away. So that's where the Kanban piece comes in. And that's what I want to talk about.
Super. And I think it is a complex environment that you find yourself in. Many organizations would split and have a dev team just be doing dev stuff, and they could do Scrum, right? Because there'd be very few interruptions along the way. What's a normal team in Scrumban? What would you think? Is they get one or two things that come in during a sprint that they have to react to, or are there more than just a few of those?
Well, a typical Scrumban team is what I would call, and maybe we've heard it in the industry also as well, as service teams. These teams are not specifically focused towards a product. And like you said, there are organizations that have those teams, and there are also healthcare organizations that have those teams, especially now with AI and machine learning. A lot of healthcare organizations are trying to get to that and improve in AI. So obviously they will have teams that are focused on that and doing Scrum. But service teams, they're servicing a group of business owners. They're servicing, for example, like HR teams, talent development. Those are teams that they need support every day. They need support because somebody cannot access a class, or somebody cannot perform and put comments on their performance review. So in these scenarios, as we're trying to improve our products and get better at providing, in this scenario, our employees with a better product, at the same time, we need to be available to help that employee or that user be able to get into the system and do what they're supposed to do. So as far as the type of work that they get the most, I want to say that we do plan, we do estimate at the beginning of our sprint. Obviously, like I said, we're trying to improve constantly. So that is the part of the Scrum piece where we're planning, when we're breaking down work, and we're trying to figure out what we're going to deliver in the middle of the sprint, at the end of the sprint, to get that continuous feedback. But also at the same time, we're not packing our sprint. And what I mean by that is we're not utilizing our full capacity from the first day. Just because there might be things that are coming along the next day that the sprint starts, the middle of the sprint that we have to react, unplannable, emergent things that we have to react to. So that is, we are saving time and capacity to react to those items, resolve them, and work with specific users, while also at the same time meeting our objectives and goals for the Scrum portion.
That makes sense. In your introduction, I think you indicated that you have a technical background. How important do you think having a technical background is to being a Scrum Master?
Yeah, so
By the way, you will get hate mail regardless of how you answer this question.
Hey, everybody has a different opinion. So I respect everybody's opinion.
I don't.
But I just want to say I started as an analyst, right? So I had some previous experience, not in all of the teams that I'm supporting or I'm a Scrum Master of, but I understand their language and I understood their processes. And to be honest with you, it did help. So it did help when I was onboarding them. It did help when I was trying to support them and answer their questions, because I was understanding their process. And it does help a lot in refinement. It does help a lot in sprint planning, because you're trying to understand what they're trying to achieve. What is the outcome that they're trying to get at the end by completing that specific user story? So it does help. It helps to understand their environment. I do also work with teams that I don't have that knowledge of. Specific teams that I work with as a Scrum Master. I've never worked with that specific product before. I've never done what they do before. But the goal as a Scrum Master, again, is to be that facilitator, but also to transform the way that a team is working, a way that they're collaborating with each other, a way that they're trying to figure out how to experiment and get better and continuously improve. So I would say it does help, but it's not a deal breaker that if you don't know what they're doing, or if you haven't done that work before, it doesn't mean that you cannot be a Scrum Master for that team.
How do you create the rapport necessary to be a facilitator and a transformation person at the same time if you don't have the background?
You work with different teams. You try to support them as much as you can and help their process. You also try to understand where they're coming from. You try to understand how they've worked in the past, how they're working now. You see it from their user stories, right? You see what type of work they're trying to deliver. You see, I'm just going to use one example, right? They're trying to build a report and they're trying to deploy that report for a specific group of users to access the report. Try to understand the logic, where they're coming from. Try to understand the outcome that they're trying to get to. And after a while, after being in their sprint planning events, after being in their refinement events, you'll understand a little bit about their work. It's not about, you doing the work. We talk a lot about, and I'm sure a lot of Scrum Masters, when they go into their first certified Scrum Master class, people say the product owner will give you the why and the what, and then the team will do the how. That is not the role of the Scrum Master. They shouldn't know the how. The team knows the how. They're the experts. So let the team guide you to get where you need to be and support them in what they need to get there.
As a Scrum Master, predominantly in Scrumban teams, what does that role really look like? What is a day in the life of Keis look like?
A day in the life of Keis. Well, in the morning, I wake up and I drink a glass of juice as part of the Scrum Master role. It was very difficult. I'll tell you, when we first onboarded the first team in a Scrumban framework, because you hear, and many, many times, Agile being used interchangeably with Scrum. And you'll hear Agile Scrum or Scrum Agile, and it's not the same thing.
Agile Scrum, that just, those phrases, I have to wear my mouth guard at night after hearing
that's
those.
What makes your blood boil.
Yeah.
And it's not the same thing, right? And people that have been working in Agile for a long time understand that. So when we first started doing Scrumban, it was hard to get them to save that capacity, so to speak, in the beginning of the sprint, because the team was trying to get as much as possible in and commit to as much as possible to satisfy the business or satisfy the stakeholders. So they're trying to help with that.
Well, they can always just get it done the next sprint, right?
Like you can wait. So they're trying to do that as much as they could. And they thought in their mind that they were failing their stakeholders by not picking something up. But at the same time, they also needed that capacity to work on issues that would arise right away in the middle of the sprint. And then what happens? How do you help them do that? What I do every day, it's a lot of helping the team. And I don't want to use the word cross-functional with the understanding that everybody knows how to do everything, right? Because not everybody knows how to do everything. We have our areas where we're specialized and we have experience on, and then we have our areas where we're less experienced, but we understand what's going on. So one of my main responsibilities is have the team collaborate with each other as much as they can. When that capacity is not available from one team member who maybe has done a specific type of work for a long time, they can maybe transfer some of that knowledge to another individual in the team who has some capacity available, and we can move the work along. How can we work together? How can we help each other to deliver value at the end of the sprint? I guess that is one of the main things, and that can be done in many ways. But that is one of the goals that I have for all of the teams that I'm the Scrum Master of.
So you help people coordinate, you help people learn and share information. What else do you do as in the role of a Scrum Master in Scrumban?
I coach them about Agile principles, Agile values. It's not all about the framework itself. It's all about it's about Agile, right? So as part of my role with the specific teams, I coach them, not give them answers, but help them get to the answer instead of just giving them the answer right away. And I've learned that sparks a thinking process, and people might discover new things as they collaborate and share ideas. But also I work with leadership and help them, adopt the Agile principles, but also help their teams adopt those Agile principles, how to be an Agile leader and how to support your teams and how to be there when they need it as they're going through specific transformations, or even if they've been doing a specific framework like Scrumban for a year and a half or 2 years. How do you continue that support, especially just because these teams are going through experimentation all the time? How can we get better? So as a leader, providing that platform where you can support those teams to continue with that transformation and getting better.
So, Keis, if you woke up tomorrow morning and you got your glass of juice and perhaps a caffeinated beverage of choice and a magic wand, and somebody said to you, you could have 2 wishes that would make the life of people doing work in our environment better, what would those 2 things be and why?
Just 2 wishes. The first thing I would...
And you can't, by the way, you can't ask for more wishes.
I thought it's always 3, no? Don't we always get 3 wishes? Is it?
I am a mean.
Yeah, apparently you can only grant 2. How to make work easier. The first thing, I would hope that people are more open, and team members and teams are more open to change. And I know that it's very difficult because as human beings, we're afraid of change. So one of the things that I would ask for is to find a way to make people welcome change rather than push it. Be open to experimentation, right? Be open to trying new things. So that's one. And why? Because it gives a lot of, if you like it, if you really do it the right way, if you never tried, then you don't know if it works or not. So we should stop being afraid and take a leap of faith and try something new. So that's one. And the other one, I would love to see, in Agile and in the Agile industry, we talk a lot about buy-in, right? We talk a lot about, that's one of the biggest challenges, buy-in from leadership, buy-in from organizational leaders. I would say I would want to see that support rather than being an obstacle for teams that are going through a transformation or they're trying to deliver value. Be a champion, understand them, help them, guide them through the path. And you don't need to know everything about Agile. You don't need to know about Scrum and what is sprint planning. You need to be available for them and help them go through that experimentation and that transformation and that work, and just listen, just be available to listen. So those are my 2 wishes.
Keis, how would people continue the conversation? How would they find out about you? How can they reach out and say, hey, Keis, can you answer this question?
I'm always available on LinkedIn. So I'm very responsive on LinkedIn. So I'm available there. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help. And I'd love to learn new things if you have anything to share. And also, Tom, if they can respond to this podcast, they can ask questions and we can take those questions.
We can do those.
On another session.
Absolutely. Keis, it's been fantastic. I'm looking forward to your new column. And, so next month we'll get the second installment.
Thank you so much.
In Reread Saturday News, this week we reread Chapter 5 of Team Topologies. I gotta say, this is actually reread 4 of this chapter. Chapter 5 is a powerhouse. This chapter lays out the 4 fundamental team topologies with examples. I read this chapter twice during my first read of the book. I read it twice this week. We'll approach thinking through the reread of this chapter over 2 weeks. This week, we start with a little practice identifying the 4 basic team topologies. Remember, links in the show notes to this week and the past weeks of this reread. Buy a copy, by the way, and read along. In the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 755, we will feature an essay on the relationship between team design, flow, and behavior. Organizations passionately espouse the need for increasing productivity and process improvement, but rarely tackle the problem of team design. Let's look that scary idea straight in the eye. We'll also have a visit from John M. Quigley, who will regale us with wisdom in his Alpha and Omega of product development column. If process improvement is an ever-featured, why does it